Before you watch this video and take any advice, please keep in mind that while I'm the #1 Yugiri on the leaderboard in North America right now, I am not that good of a player. I'm only Neutron 3 right now. I think the highest I got was Neutron 2 before the matchmaking. Maybe she's better than I think she is. Maybe she's worse than I think she is. And maybe what I'm telling you is not how you play her. But, so why am I making this video? It's because nobody else is making a good video. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I have not seen a good or extensive guide on how to play Yugiri. And so consider this video a placeholder until somebody better than me makes a Yugiri video. And by all means, check out that video.
I have a frag and win they what the fuck.
I'm throwing. Back up. I got 2? You're not taking that. No! No way you took that! No way! No way you did that!
Being pushed.
Oh, I got 3.
All of them?
Now you might think that Yugiri is cracked for that, but she's not. She's boring, dull, hard, and just all around not a good character, in my opinion. And I main her. When I say that she's boring, I mean, she's not meant to take fights. If you're taking ones with Yugiri, you're throwing 50% of the time, as her gun is awful, and her abilities take a while before they're effective, and until your enemy has rushed through every Q ability and passive that you've thrown at them, you shouldn't be taking fights. To start with, when we talk about her gun, she has the exact same gun as Meredith, obviously. It has the same handling as Fuchsia's gun with half the damage. No accuracy to make up for it, and your only hope of getting damage is probably through headshots only. What her abilities do fake damage. So if you stand inside her AoE, then you start to lose armor. But the problem with that is that the armor is only a temporary effect, and if the opponent decides to not push your smoke at all or your abilities, they just get everything back, no matter what kind of armor that they have. So it's only really a threat if they're playing in your abilities. And in my personal opinion, Yugiri is just a worse Meredith, simply because Meredith takes less time to set up her abilities. You don't have to do any lineups to set up her abilities, and you don't have to activate her abilities. On top of that, if you are in Meredith's abilities, you have worse gunfire, worse reload time, slower movement speed, and if she upgrades to A3, you're practically blind. Yugiri's passive is also kind of redundant. It takes 120 shots with the upgrade to be able to activate her passive ability, which is upon dealing sufficient damage to an enemy with her main weapon, corrosive toxins erupt from the target. I've had this, I think this is bugged because I've had me do 25 shots at no armor and it activates the ability. I've had it do 120 damage and then it activates the ability. It's hard to tell when the ability activates. On top of that, it doesn't make sense because to get it activated, you have to shoot the enemy until they have no shields. Okay? Her ability, her passive ability, corrodes the shields or the armor, meaning you have to get rid of their armor to get rid of their armor. Which, why? What? The only time you're gonna get an ability from that, the only time you're gonna get benefit from that, is if you are fighting 1v2, all of your enemies miss their bullets, and they stand in the exact same spot, or as their last enemy that got shot. Meaning, in order for her bad ability to work, the enemies have to be worse. Let's talk about her abilities. Her snail, or her Q, it's a snail that emits an AoE that corrodes armor and is very useful for punishing enemies behind cover. It Its effects go through walls, which is very important for retakes. That being said, if your enemy is not in your ability, it's just useless. So don't place all of your abilities down at once because you don't even know if the enemy is going to go there. And then you'll have to wait 30 to 40 seconds before you can use your abilities again. You can only have 3 snails down at once. So if you were to use all 3, that means the first one you place down will disappear, and then the third one will take its spot. You at most want to place an ability down at the beginning of the match if you can set it up in time. That way you'll have 2 more abilities by the round starts. Otherwise, don't fall for the trap of pre-setting up unless you're on map-specific places and it's very obvious that they're going to go one direction. The other thing is that it's very easy to counter Yugiri's abilities. So most of the common things that you want to do when using her snail is if an enemy is pushing through, you do not activate your ability until the enemy is already on the ability. This causes the duelist to panic and push into sight more, and then the people behind the ability to hesitate before committing to the site. Another common tactic is to play Yugiri like a reverse Meredith. So the common play style for Meredith is you see an enemy, you press Q on them, and then you push them. With Yugiri, because you don't want to take your ones, and on defense, your job is just to make the enemy weak before your team arrives. That way they can take fights. Or make it hard for the enemy to push you because they don't want to push with 100 health. How you do this is if you have your abilities up, you activate your ability and your enemies push through that, pay attention, pay very close attention to where the duelist is going next. So let's say they push past that, deactivate it, and then you see them starting to come up to here. Then you obviously push that there. You put an ability there to make them hesitate, and then you back up behind your teammates. And by the time the enemy is forced to confront you, they will be at 100 health disadvantage while your whole team is at 200 health. The other thing is you want the enemy to commit to you. Yugiri's worst abilities is that she cannot rotate very well. She does not have the abilities to rotate well. If you're retaking a site, your best bet is to make it hard for them to peek you. And then what the enemy's going to do is probably just play back more. And then you have to burn another Q here, or another snail, to take heaven. And honestly, that's the most she's going to do on a retake. Is she's going to gas heaven or places of interest to make it hard for the enemy to take advantageous spots. I'll make another video on all of the lineups that I use to be able to retake sites to make it retaking a little bit easier. But typically, you don't want the enemy to leave your site. You want to be on site before the enemy team. The good thing about it is that sometimes the enemy doesn't think the snail is a problem, which is very useful if they don't respect this. So if you leave that there, count to like 5 to 10 seconds, throw a nade, it's an instant down. Like they just lose. Other really good spots for Yugiri Snail is knowing where the enemy is going to push. And specifically, when they're jumping up off of being stringified. So if the enemy has to jump up, they have a weapon animation that forces them to pause before they can shoot. Say, for example, right here, see how long I'm going to hold down the trigger button, and I'll show you how long it takes for me from de-stringifying to take a fight here. That took me at least, or half a second to a full second, which, if I'm already in position here, allows me to take advantage, like in this clip right here. It's B, it's B. So having her snail placed on places where the enemy has to be disarmed to push up is very, very good. Placing Yugiri Snail on small objects where enemies take place in cover is very advantageous. For example, when taking control of garden, placing a snail there allows you to have a very disadvantageous fight into a very advantageous fight, as the enemy can no longer hug corners or cover to be able to fight this.
Only one ally remaining. One enemy remaining.
Oh, the clutch.
Let's talk about her upgrades. When it comes to upgrading Yugiri's abilities, it's important to know that your abilities, despite them being bad, or like not as good as other abilities, they are the best part of your kit. As somehow her gun might be worse. Like, just might be worse. So it's not even worth going A3 because it's better for you to have both abilities up and instead of like having a full gun kit. So normally when my first upgrade, surprise, this is a controversial take because I play this game a lot, but one of the things that no matter how much I've tried to improve, I have to admit that I'm not good at aiming. So one of the things that I will buy is recoil handling. That is the first thing I buy on her gun. If I'm doing well, then I get armor as well. Otherwise, sell, buy armor. And then my third upgrade should be cooldown minus 15 seconds. This is almost imperative for you to be able to put down more snails and effectively control your opponents into hesitation. So AKA, if you want to like start at the first round with minus 15 cooldown, you can set one down there before the round starts, and by the time the round starts, you'll have both of your snails up. After that, if I'm doing really good again, then I'll immediately get A2 by round 4. You should be rushing A2 every time. If you're not doing really good, then you would buy damage or spread control. This one's up to your preference. I think buying capacity is the least important thing to do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people shoot better and they disagree with me. Depending on the scale of the map, for accuracy, I will go either spread control or ADS speed. So if the map is small like this one, I will go spread control because I don't need to ADS enough. But if I'm playing a larger map like Area 88 or Port Euler, I will run ADS speed because being able to line up my cursor before I take the shot is way more important than me being able to have more consistency on my gun. But again, that one's more up to personal preference. I'm sure a lot of the pros would disagree with me. After that, I don't even know if it's worth upgrading Toxic Burst. I think it is the worst upgrade she has. As we discussed before, her passive ability is redundant. You need to get rid of somebody's armor to get an effect that gets rid of somebody's armor. Her A1 allows that to linger for a bit, and you might get some bonus off of that. It's generally not worth it. To get value off of A1 is you have to shoot people that are all in the same area, and that means they're 5-man rushing you, and you shouldn't be shooting them if they're 5-man rushing you. You should be making them go through your abilities. The biggest problem with Yugiri's A3 is that there are so many scan characters in the game, and the smoke doesn't stop any of it. Meaning that if you were to hide in smoke while a Lewin knife is going off or economy echo chamber is going off, you're still going to get detected. So there's no reason to run it. Another benefit to just having A1 or A2 is that you get to see the enemies who are currently taking toxic damage. So just don't run it. And I think if they were to buff Yugiri to be relevant or buff her A3, they should make it so that vision doesn't detect people inside of the smoke. Yugiri's ult, without a doubt, is the best part of her kit. It is a giant, big block that covers the size of a room. It takes a little bit of startup time, but you can do it behind walls, and you don't really have to have any lineups to use her abilities. So it's pretty safe for her to use her ultimate. And you can see right here, this is massive. It covers the whole site of smaller maps and offers a lot of retake ability to her kit. I mean, it's also great because once you use it, any kills you get because of her ult adds to her ult. So you don't need to wait for her ult ability to disappear for you to begin building up for it again. On top of that, the wall moves pretty fast, so you can chase people down through it, and it allows you to retake very key points on the map. For example, retaking Garden on Windy Town, or literally all of the site on base 404. Sometimes you might need to convince your team to push with it, as they will not know how to push with an ult, a Yugiri ult, but it is very, very powerful, and undoubtedly the best thing about her kit. So you may be wondering when to pick Yugiri. What are the best times to pick? Never! You shouldn't play her. Honestly, like, she's an okay character. She's not awful, but like, she's just like, there's no character that you want less than her. So like, say for example, she's a controller right now. Madeline's A2 can slow off an entire site and prevent people from stringifying. Yvette's Bear is a better Yugiri Q. It makes opponents slippery. You don't have to show visibility to use it. Her abilities allow for real damage. And on top of that, her bear is just good. You can shoot through the bear. You can move the bear. It's incredible. It's way more necessary. You can also use her to deny plants by charging at people. You can get snowballs to where you can throw it into tough to reach places. And her passive allows her to not get scanned by enemy abilities. There's no reason to run Yugiri over Yvette. There's no reason to not have a Michelle. Nobu is Nobu, and Audrey does real damage. There's just no reason to run Yugiri over anyone else right now.